pleased to introduce Karen Hall, who some people know her from outpatient rehab, and then you transitioned to Garden Ridge.
Correct.
And now she's the acting resident life director.
Thank you.
And my new boss. And so Karen's come on to help us celebrate and talk a little bit about the Telly Awards. So first, welcome.
Thank you, Diane. I'm excited to be here. It's been a while since I've been here, but it's always nice to interact with the residents and see this all-woman set today. This is exciting. Excited about the Telly Awards again. However, I have to be completely honest, Diane. In my years of being here, I've heard about how amazing we are, but I've never been truly familiar with what the Telly Awards are. So I'd love the opportunity to know a little bit about the Telly Awards.
And you know, I think you've come to the right person. So the Telly Awards are an international video competition. They were started in 1979, so they've been around for quite a while. And they have various categories that people can submit awards for, not awards, videos for awards in various categories. This particular year we're talking about is 2017, so it was last year. And for that year, they received over 12,000 entries from all 50 states and 5 countries.
Wow.
And the people who submit can be individuals. In fact, before I started at Green Spring, I had won a Telly Award on my own as a freelancer, so I was familiar with the competition. But companies submit awards and private industry, so it can be anyone. And the categories, excuse me, this head cold is just kind of blowing my mind away, can be broadcast or non-broadcast. So broadcast would be, you know, your various networks. So companies that have submitted awards include CBS, ESPN, BET, you know, so all the major networks.
Impressive.
And, you know, companies that people, you know, would recognize. And then
so you're telling me you're a celebrity already amongst the Telly, and then you've brought your celebrity status to Green Spring.
Oh, you think that's, well, okay.
Yes.
Well, I'll have to tell that to my kids and see if they agree with that. But so as the year goes on, they will announce we are now receiving entries. And so what I did some 15 years ago, can you believe this?
Wow.
Was I went to, at the time, Kimberly Nelson was managing, excuse me, the television facility. And I said, Kimberly, have you ever heard of the Telly Awards? And of course she hadn't. And I explained it, and I said, you know, I kind of would like to have the opportunity to submit some of our work and see what happens. And she was like, that sounds great. And we submitted 2 entries, won 2 awards that year, and we won, and I don't have it with, I should have brought it, we won 2 silver Telly Awards, which is their highest award. And I have yet to do that again. But we've always won the bronze, and the bronze is their second award. So what happens is you submit the awards, and it's not, we don't pay for these awards, because if we had, I should say, Green Spring would have had more than just 32 awards. Trust me on that. It is a paid, you know, like the Tony Awards and Emmy Awards and the Oscars. You know, you pay to submit an award. You don't just go, oh, nominate me.
Right.
No, we're talking, especially with the Oscars, we're talking big bucks there, you know. But at any rate, so there is an entry fee. And then what's different with the Telly is versus an Emmy award. With the Emmy award, you pay up front. So regardless of whether or not you win, you're paying whatever it is. Way back when is like 500, but
Oh, wow.
I'm sure
Okay.
it's probably closer to 1,000, if not over 1,000. So you pay up front, and then if you win, you get, you know, the award and whatever. With the Tellys, you don't pay for the award unless you win the award. And then you have the option. You don't have to buy the statue, but it's kind of
We like
nice.
it. We like the recognition. Look at all these that we have.
Right, and people keep saying, Diane, you should display them in a case somewhere, and I'm like, I think the case would be, wouldn't hold all the 32. So that's essentially.
Tell me a little bit about the submissions that we have entered. You know, what kind of content are we submitting?
It can be anything. In the past, we've had shows that have been our holiday music gift, which we have done every December to celebrate the holiday season, and that involves, you know, staff and residents who come on and share their gifts, their musical gifts. In fact, that category we've won the most. It could be things like the Scholars Campaign. We've won for the Scholars Campaign. We've won for our exercise shows. I'm trying to remember what else have we won for. Here we go. We won last year for behind the scenes of the players.
Okay.
So we spotlighted the players.
I see some here from Shining Stars, Jingle Bell Rock.
So it can be anything. It really, we've done, training tapes. And so the categories can vary from social and cultural. So we've won for social shows with Black History Month, health and fitness. Again, our exercise shows. We've won a few awards with the medical center that we did years back on depression and alcoholism. Again, music, history. We've won several awards on history shows that we have done. So it really is the gamut. So what I do in the springtime is, and actually throughout the year, I'm always writing myself notes. And this may be a show we want to submit. Or sometimes our resident volunteers will say, Diane, that's a Telly Award-winning show, you know, and I put that in my notes. And then come spring, I look at my notes and we talk to the staff and I say, well, these are the shows I'm thinking about. What do you think? In fact, I'm already thinking the Scholars Show, but I'm going to do that one with a little bit of a twist this year. Instead of just submitting the dance video, do a little bit more of a synopsis of what the program actually is involved.
Now, what sounds most exciting to me about all of this, Diane, is that this is very resident-driven. It sounds like the residents are very involved in the production process, the selection process, along with you in terms of what content they want to submit. So is that something that really excites them? And because I see so many volunteers are doing this.
Well, and the thing that's so interesting, and I want to say when I submit the awards, I always want to go, oh, by the way, this award was done with people who are in their 80s and 90s and have never done television. So the fact that we're competing against professional network, you know, award-winning, high-paying, you know, folks always blows me away. And I keep telling the Telly Awards, you really should have a kind of a senior category, but they haven't taken my suggestion up yet. Who knows? Maybe they will one day, maybe they won't. But at any rate, yeah, the fact that these programs are a combination of residents and staff really speaks a lot. And also reminds me that Spotlight in History also has won a Telly Award.
I've seen those on some. They're very good. Great content, a lot of educational things that I've learned just from watching them at times as well.
Right, and so each entry is then judged by a 3-person judge, kind of like a panel, but it's not like you're in a room together, because I actually, because of winning the Silver Tellys, I'm on what's called the Silver Telly Council. So I have a little bit more input. Of course, it doesn't mean that I've got any influence, but that's why I'm like, when they say, Diane, do you know, take a survey, and I'm like, well, I really think you should do this. but they do ask that you judge the awards. And what I like about judging is I get to see other things. And a lot of times I take the things that I'm judging and I say to my staff, look at this. Isn't that an interesting way of doing things?
Excellent.
So it gives us kind of, to me, a way to stay involved with all the new things that are happening in the industry. So anyway, the judges judge separately and determine whether or not the entry is worthy of an award.
Now, how many awards are given out yearly? Is it only a set number that is given out?
There is, especially for the silver, which again is the hardest category. 1 to 2% of all entries fall into that category, and then about 30% in the bronze category. So it's not like everyone who submits, gets it. And like I said, if that was the case, we'd have, I don't know, because over the years, I sometimes have submitted as many as 10. And so 10 times, we'd have 150.
Oh, wow. Again, that speaks volumes to the quality of the work being done here at Green Spring, the excellence of the gifts that our residents are sharing with us, and that the staff is sharing with the residents is sharing with the staff. And again, even kudos to GSV-TV here in showing our residents, again, speaking to, we're competing against professionals who've been doing this all their lives, and here we have our residents and Green Spring learning this and learning a new art and being able to pull it all together and win all these awards.
And speaking of that, so this year's award, and I have 2 certificates, one which will be framed and the other one which won't, because we have to send it to California. So this year we spotlighted Bettie Jean Owens, who's one of our residents. And Bettie Jean, for a lot of people know, she plays ragtime piano. And Andrew Seegers, who a lot of people know, who used to be a member of our team and has since moved on to California, spotlighted Bettie Jean last year and produced the award-winning video.
Well, I'm sorry that Bettie Jean is not able to be here with us today, however, but I'd like to, for presenting to you, you can present it to Bettie Jane Owen later. We received another Telly Award here, so I'd like to present that to you.
Thank you.
And so you can take it out and display it here.
There we go. It will be proudly displayed on the set. And we will give Bettie Jean her certificate framed later, and I'll send Andrew his certificate. The show has been on YouTube, and we'll just kind of also move it into our Telly playlist. But we're going to play some of that right now to let people get a feel of why the spotlight on Bettie Jane Owen won a
Well,
Telly.
congratulations yet again on another Telly.
And thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
My husband had to travel quite a bit. Thomas is out in Kansas, I think. It's the Midwestern state. When he came home, he had a piece of music in his hand, and he said, "You won't ever believe the pianist I heard." We always had it in my house because my mother was a very fine pianist. Yeah. And she was also an organist. She was still playing the organ when she was 87 years old for a church. But she was what I call a natural pianist. She had grown up. She hadn't grown up. She was a small child in a very tiny Mississippi village. Her father would walk her down to the schoolhouse, which was in the church, and let her play the organ. And at that time, it was the old pump organ. But because in school, as I understand it in those days, they taught something known as It's note singing. In other words, you don't have a melody, you sing the notes. And Mother could already play the piano by the time she was, in the 6th grade, and the organ. And so her father and mother sold everything they had and moved to a little town in Mississippi called Blue Mountain so that she could get a high school and a college education. And her father wanted her to major in piano. Well, in those days, you started with the scales. A lot of people don't realize, but that's where you start today, too, also, with the scales. Right. Yeah. And she did not continue taking lessons. She changed her major in college over to fine arts. And she was very, very good at speaking, teaching her children how to stand up, give a speech, speak distinctly. But I grew up with her playing the piano, particularly on Sunday afternoons. Not much to do in the Mississippi Delta on a Sunday afternoon. And so she played swing. And we had a neighbor who also was a crackerjack pianist. So she would come over because she didn't have a piano, and she and Mother would alternate, particularly on Sunday afternoons. Then my older sister was already into studying the piano. And I guess my mother was the influence. We should be musical. My father loved classical music, but at the same time, he didn't play an instrument. But I gave a concert back in my home surroundings when I was in my 20s, and I always laughed. My father was a cotton farmer, and his favorite piece on my program was a Beethoven etude, I guess it was. No, it was a sonata.
So you started in the classical
Oh, yeah.
realm, okay.
Yeah. But my teacher, when I was about in the 7th grade, started this indoctrination in hymns, which was wonderful. And I realized after I matured that Leska, because she was the church pianist, she wanted me to take her place on Sundays and give her a little respite. So I learned hymns, and I've discovered that hymns set quite well for a number of reasons. It teaches you to transpose, because if you don't like one key, you can always put it in another, which might run you into some trouble. I had a violinist I was accompanying once, and I did that from E to E flat, because flats are so much easier to play. And she didn't miss a note. She went right into that E flat mode. But I played hymns, I accompanied the high school glee club, gave recital about once a year. My gang, if you call it a gang in high school, we always congregated at one particular house, and in the summertime, the lady would push her grand piano out on an enclosed porch, and there'd be 2 or 3. Well, poor Betty Jane, she was always stuck at the piano. And this lady's older son, who was much older than we were, loved Dixieland, and he had probably the first record player I ever saw in my life, except for the old-fashioned ones. It would change the stack of records by itself, and he was a drummer, so he liked ragtime. He liked Dixieland. So I heard all the Dixieland in that respect. And then I went to swing, like I said, playing for the gang. And then by the time I got to college, I still liked Dixieland. Of course, I had to delve in classical music more so. And then I met the man I was going to marry after I got out of college.
Right.
And at that time, I was teaching English. I got on a Greyhound bus every Saturday, went to Memphis, Tennessee, rode an hour, 30 minutes out to a school of music and studied with a teacher that I had already heard his pupils. And I knew that I wanted to study with him. So I picked this little bitty town in Mississippi to teach English. And that was my Saturday for 2 years. Still, no ragtime. And while I was in Memphis then, teaching and studying with Mr. Myers, I had known my future husband at one time, but not really. He was from another little town.
Yeah.
And so we managed to meet at a bus station one day.
Yeah.
He was going back to the University of Mississippi. I was heading north for Sardis, Mississippi. And I said, oh, how are you? Aren't you Doc Owen? I'd been dating his best friend all summer. So that's how I had met him. And he said, you're one of the Boland girls, aren't you? What are you doing on this bus? I thought, he doesn't even remember my name. I had 3 sisters. And he said, I'll call you next week. So he did. Well, that was the beginning of a 6-year romance. So Thomas and I were married in '54, and of all things moved to Erie, Pennsylvania.
Totally new environment for you.
Totally. Yeah. One of the best things that could have ever happened to me.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I went from an agricultural society, which ruled that section of the Delta,
Yeah.
to a completely industrial one where the culture was completely different.
Probably politically different, too.
Politically,
Yeah.
church-wise, education-wise. And they had a very good philharmonic. And Thomas had to travel, like I say. He was rarely home during the week, all over the United States. Mm-hmm. Well, he was probably 55 by this time, right? So I got interested in philharmonic work and also in a poetry group. So I got to know that strata of people in Erie. And then we joined a very small church, which I really enjoyed. It was more like the churches that I had grown up in. And so Thomas is out in Kansas, I think. It's the Midwestern state. When he came home, he had a piece of music in his hand, and he said, "You won't ever believe the pianist I heard." He had gone into a bar one night, and there sat ragtime Bob Darsh, playing nothing but ragtime. Old-fashioned ragtime. What do you do with a rag?
You clean with it.
You throw it away. Well, ragtime, and remember its source, it began in the Midwest, Kansas and Missouri. It was highly influenced by the blues and Dixieland, which came up the Mississippi River and Chicago. Tin Pan Alley had not come into the ascendancy yet. And there's another reason for ragtime being mainly where it was formed originally. They had very fine black college in Joplin, Missouri. Also, there was, I don't know why, the Midwest, Kansas, Nebraska, Missouri, they provided schooling for the African Americans. This is not, 1900 is not very long after the Civil War ended. And you had minstrels, which adopted ragtime. You had traveling bands of very young black musicians. And when I say young, 16, 17, 18. You also have to remember where they played, mainly in speakeasies, brothels, dance halls. So it was considered unsavory. And that summer, which would be then the summer of '57, I was down in Mississippi with my parents, and they were going actually furniture shopping. And while they furniture shopped, there was a trash store very close. Well, by this time, Thomas and I had really gotten into the ragtime collection of if you could find music, which you couldn't find. There was no sheet music published. And I ran across the Maple Leaf Rag. Scott Joplin bought it, took it home. Thomas and I started working on that. And I mean, you work when you play the Maple Leaf Rag.
Oh, I bet.
I don't play it much, but if I really work at it, I can play it. This is like an evolution in a way. Thomas and I had, with our friends, when Thomas grabbed hold of something, it literally ruled his life except for his business. And so we had bought an old upright piano for $20, I think. We were, of course, in Erie, every house had a basement. So he and a buddy put that upright grand into our basement. Well, then when the children came along, we had a dog named Ragtime. He was in the basement. We had the swing set in the basement, because in Erie, from October to April, it snows. So your children can't go out. So we put the swing set down there. We had the choo-choo train running around the track, Thomas on the piano. And he had followed Bob Darsh. Wherever Bob Darsh played I guess you call them gigs.
He was there.
He was there. And he kept...
So I hope you enjoyed that excerpt of our number 32 International Telly Browns Award-winning Spotlight on Bettie Jean Owens. It is on our YouTube channel, and we will be broadcasting the entire program again as an encore later on this month. So please take a chance and watch the entire episode. It's a great one.